Besides, the Security Service of Ukraine states it had the evidence that Russia finances those channels. Our journalists have details.
Manipulative propaganda should receive a harsh reaction. This is how the president of Ukraine commented on the decision on sanctions. Sanctions is a difficult decision. Ukraine strongly supports freedom of speech, not propaganda financed by the aggressor country that undermines Ukraine on its way to EU and Euro-Atlantic integration. Fight for independence is fight in the information war for truth and European values. Earlier, Volodymyr Zelensky signed a decree on the entry into force of the National Security and Defense Council decision on personal and economic sanctions against MP Taras Kozak and associated legal entities for a period of 5 years. Ukrainian TV channels 112 Ukraine, ZIK and News One came under the restrictions. Their broadcasting is blocked. Among 19 members of the National Security and Defense Council, 17 voted for the decision. One member of the National Security and Defense Council abstained, and one is on a business trip. The decision was made, the relevant decree is posted on the president's website. The president's office notes that the decision was legal and reasonable. This decision of the National Security Council was based on evidence of the existence of a threat to the national security and defense of the country gathered by the Security Service of Ukraine. In the future, all these materials gathered by the Security Service will be evaluated by a court in a trial. The reason for this was indisputable evidence and the proof that those TV channels have been funded by the aggressor state for a long time. Accordingly, the state could not fail to act in conditions when the aggression intensifies, when Crimea remains occupied, when Ukrainian soldiers continue dying in the occupied Donbas. The Security Service of Ukraine confirms that they are investigating people and companies that have come under the sanctions. There is a hybrid war waged against Ukraine, including in the information sphere. We should systematically counteract it in order to protect the interests of the state. The Ministry of Internal Affairs, as a body of power, which is also responsible for the internal security of the state, will clearly and lawfully implement the decision of the National Security and Defense Council, the decree of the President of Ukraine, and protect the interests of Ukrainian citizens. The National Council of Ukraine on television and radio broadcasting has also for a long time fixed violations by television channels that have come under sanctions.
Over the past year, TV channel 112 received 6 warnings, TV channel ZIK received 5. As for the News One, for more than a year there is a case in court to terminate their license. It is in connection with serious violations of the law on television and radio broadcasting. I'm talking about the language of violence, about issues that are treated as cause for violence, about contempt.
Sanctions against Taras Kozak and his TV channels became a hot topic at the plenary meeting of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Members of the faction Opposition Platform for Life blocked the parliamentary stand in order to speak out against such a decision. Remember, you will not shut our mouth, neither of our party nor of millions of our voters. Remember, you will not shut us up with murders, channel bans, terror. The Servant of the People faction considers the National Security Council's decision as justified. These sanctions are imposed for systematic disinformation towards Ukraine, Ukrainian society, Ukrainian politicians, distortion of information. According to head of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on Humanitarian and Information Policy Mikita Poturaev, restricting the work of channels is just one step in the fight against anti-Ukrainian forces controlled by the Kremlin. Actually, this decision is not about channels. This is a decision about people who, under the guise of Ukrainian legislation, using Ukrainian passports, are in fact the conductors of the Russian anti-Ukrainian policy in Ukraine and do business here. Moreover, they conduct business both with Russia and with terrorist groups. The Ministry of Culture and Information Policy will ask YouTube to close the pages of the channels 112 Ukraine, ZIK and News One. The ministry plans to send the decision of the National Security and Defense Council to the management of the video hosting. Those channels in air, satellite or internet broadcast pose an information threat to Ukraine's national security, as they are not the media or a normal broadcaster, but part of the Russian propaganda machine against Ukraine. The decision to impose sanctions was supported by the United States of America. This information is confirmed by the US Embassy in Ukraine. The decision was also positively assessed by the European Union. This was informed by head of the Ukrainian delegation to the EU. Reported by Vadim Kramer, Yulia Kryuchkova and Artem Golub, UATV News.